national map. As you see, this is a map that was done by Chris of all the different trails that we hike in Cumaca. So there's a lot of exploration that we can do. So we even went to Cumaca from this way. We go to the different peaks. We go to the dam. Could you put this second map up? Second map. Just to give you the routes we take and the experience. So I know you all will know, like from the quarry in Cumaca and the bridge. When you go to Ture Falls, this is the falls here. And we would hike from the falls, from Ture to the front of the dam. And we would pass what is known as Cantamona Mountain, right? Now these things we didn't learn overnight. We would have done several attempts. At first, when we started to do it, we didn't take the ridge line. If you look here, there's a ridge line that you could take from here and you can go all the way up to the top and then go down to the front of the dam. But this is the top here, sorry. Right here, and then go down to the front of the dam. Sometimes even going down, if you might be going down, but going down a mountain sometimes splits up into different veins. So the first attempt, we even went down and landed somewhere here, right? But that's all part of the exploring, fun of exploring, right? Next, from here, so this actually, when you leave the bridge and you head into the falls, there's a tributary right here. And this tributary, you could take a trail that would lead you to the plane crash. So I'm going to show you pictures of the plane crash so you could see what it is.
Right, so here we have the tiger-colored bromeliad in bloom, Vreesia glutonosa, and this is on our way to the crash site, plane crash site.
In Cumaca.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, so we have finally reached to the crash site here. There are remnants all over, and close by you have a lot of Utopi palm. We also saw these leaves are from the balata tree, Manelcara bidentata, and the fruit from this tree would provide food for animals and so on. Across here you have another flower. It's also called the mountain rose or Brownia coccinea, and this other flower here is camille. So we're around here. Yeah. So it's a beautiful environment. We came here after a tough walk through some precipitous terrain. Beautiful forest.
Okay, move on out. Okay, we are the plane crash site of the B24 bomber that was crashed in 1943, right, where it took off from Komuto and 8 or 9 American soldiers got killed, right? So not until 1993 did they come and take some of the parts, and it's now in the military museum, right? Here you see some of the massive parts that was recovered from the wreckage. Right? Look at it. all over here you see wreckage parts. Just to let you know, the location is overlooking the Hollis Dam between Cumaca and the Hollis Dam. This is another part Dan is holding.
Yes, some of the surrounding plants are the Utopi sp, and you have the Manelcara bidentata, edible. So animals would come close to this area for food and sun. Beautiful, beautiful site.
Okay, so we hope people come and visit it. Remember, 9 Americans died. It was a bomber plane, and 3 guns recovered. So we're still looking in the bush here to see if we could find the other 9 guns that missing. Over and out. Okay, and there is Dan, and he's holding a piece of the plane crash. The plane crashed in 1943. It was an American B24 bomber. It is believed that 7 people, soldiers, died in the crash. Right? And this is parts of the plane so that you could see. Right? Over and out. In case anybody wants to visit, the location is up in the Cumaca Hills. It's between the Ture River, right, and the Valencia Dam. The highest peak in the Cumaca Hills between the Ture River and the Valencia Dam. You got a steep mountain to climb to get here, but it's worth the effort. Over and out. So this is what the plane looks like that crashed, right? And you could just go through and show them. I show you some of the parts of the plane. Maybe you could identify it if you know. And this is the guns, right? That was in the museum. And that's how big the shell was. Next, okay. Guns, the old guns that was recovered. And the sketcher, you know, explained to me the whole story. I went to him. Right? Right. So we go to the Cumaca Cave, yes. Okay, so we leave the plane crash. There's the cross. I don't know if you know the cross. It's a mountain called Mendoza here. And there are two routes that to get to the cave. One is a road right here. There are two roads here. One is Jennings Road and one is Pomponet. Or you could drive all the way down to the village where they see Ballhead Springs, right? And start walking from there. But the shorter route is where Pomponet Road is, right? You just have to walk down the hill to get to the cave. But you have to climb back up the hill. So that's the only downside of going to the cave. As well as you could go from Ballhead Springs, and that's a more gentle walk to reach at that cave junction there. Then, from the cave junction, we walk a little lower down where we meet a concrete landing. That concrete landing would go up the little tributary and then hike all the way to what I call the base camp of Mendoza. Right? That's the name of the mountain. And this is the summit of Mendoza. Actually, when we first attempted, me and Sam Raj is here, we went to the summit of Mendoza. We swing the wrong way trying to get to the waterfall, right? But we enjoyed climbing the summit to see what it was like. It was very rocky and stony. Anyway, when you reach base camp here, it's a downhill trek to the front of the Hollis Dam. But of course, the terrain is steep in a lot of areas. This particular hike, just to get to the waterfall, can take 5 hours, one way, right? So it's a long walk from here. Actually, Glenn Wilkes is the one who said he thinks there is a route. And he died before he could show us the route or show us markings or whatnot, but he mentioned that there is a route. And once he says so, I say I will take up the challenge and see if I can find it. So on the second attempt, we got it, but the first attempt, we went here. Right? Now, when you from the concrete landing here, which is you can get to the Cumaca Cave, or it's also called the Orpuch Cave or the Guaco Cave. So I'm going to show you some pictures of what the cave like. I don't know if you all have never been to it. There are two routes.
One in concrete landings, so that those are the concrete.
It was an estate before, right? And that's why people could have actually drove to the cave. I will show you the old house on the trail, right? So those concrete landings, actually there are two. So there are two concrete landings heading to the cave.
How old were those be?
It was when cocoa was popular in the early 1990s.
60 years ago now.
Yeah.
Yeah, fans of it, but in the map,
Yeah.
estate down there was.
Yeah.
They actually, they're telling us a lot of stuff before the caves.
You would see a lot of cocoa
Yeah.
trees still existing in the forest. Even when we going from here, going from here to the forest to the dam, with the caves, all along this trail here, right? If you go to the two, you can show the cave. So you'll see some of the pictures of what the Cumaca Cave looked like. Or this is the dam, right? This is the dam by Ballhead Springs. In the back of Ballhead Springs, this I believe would supply the people with water in Cumaca. Cumaca was once a village. Right now, the road is so bad. I think it had a school. If you see the school, lovely, but I think it's now abandoned. So, you know, so we would leave. This particular expedition, we left the trail at Pomconet or Jennings Trace and went down to where Ballhead Springs was, and this is the dam is in the back of where Ballhead Springs is. Right? The guy who owns the house, nice house, he called it Ballhead Springs. I didn't name it Ballhead Springs. Right? Right. So this is Lawrence talking about the dam. Right? And this, yeah, Ballhead Springs. Right. This is the house you're talking about. The old estate house going to the cave. Right? It's probably worse than this now. Right? It's probably all dilapidated. Right? This is the entrance to the cave. Right? You see what the entrance look like. Keep going. All right, you play this one. And this is Michael holding a horsewhip snake. What's the other name you call it?
Well, taking up the challenge. Getting braver and braver, the snakes. That's a good sign.
That's not a good sign because I'm not holding it. Michael holding it. I'll touch your tail and
You want to attack here. Yeah, man. But even though if it bites you, the teeth that's so small.
yeah, just take a small bite.
Yeah.
And
No,
hope it
yeah.
up.
So we are heading up the stream, trying to figure out where the cave is located. So we are more or less in an exploring mode. With Mario, Samraj and Michael. And of course your humble servant.
And this is a yellow belly puffer. Look at the length. As we walk the length. The real big fella. Real big fella. Look at his mouth there. Right, let me go again. The yellow belly puffer.
Get it? Yeah.
Come closer so you can see his hat head.
Got that shot by that corner.
Yeah.
My phone, if you want to use my phone.
I'll use mine.
Yeah.
All right, so Michael got a yellow belly puffer and the snake is, I would say, about 10 feet long. Look at it. Wow. Right?
It's a beauty to hold him, man. Oh, you're reaching the creation and you're reaching the wild.
Yeah, Michael, that is
What you want better than that?
the largest snake
What
I
you
ever seen.
want better than that?
Seriously.
In the wild.
How you call it again?
Yellow belly puff.
What's the length of that now? Want a bite, Michael? You want a bite?
Go ahead.
This is the Mavipi Balsan. Nice thick one, venomous. You need to be very careful in handling this. You need to know what to do.
Deadly.
Deadly.
Deadly. And of course, we meet it on the trail.
Meet it on your trail.
You know, it's part of our adventures.
Yes.
Could I hold it?
No, I wouldn't let you take the chance and hold it. Not this one.
Not this one.
Clifford Rodriguez say, don't try and hold it. Maria wouldn't let you hold this one. Alright. I just want to get still shot. Yeah, take some.
We don't kill the snakes, right? Right? But see, that one was a bad snake. So, the Cumaca forest, you could expect anything, but you don't always see snakes. It's just that thing is so true. But it's usually okay. And sometimes in the mouth of the cave, I would see mackerel too. They would be up in the trees, like they probably wait in the night for the birds to come out to snatch them, right? So I'll give you a little view of what inside the cave and you can see. And then, oh, by the way, these are two divers that died in the cave, right?
They have a naturalist for that. He was there.
Yeah. You were there?
No, I wasn't there.
Oh,
And who was there?
yeah. So these two divers, the cave is very tempting to find out where the source of the river and people go underground. And these divers lost their lives trying to go underground. When we go inside the cave, I'll show you. Remember, it's a cave, so you can't see. I can only take photos. The birds, I can tell you about the birds in the cave. They're oil birds, they're different species of animals. I can give you a little history about the oil bird. It's one of the largest colony or the largest colony of oil birds in Trinidad. The bird itself is about 18 inches in length. The wingspan is about 33 to 40 in width, right? Inches. They lay about 4 eggs, and the incubation period is about 33 days, right? The young ones will leave the nest anywhere between 95 to 120 days, right? The Indians used to use the oil from the birds to light lanterns, right? And this is the same snake. Actually, Michael took it down from the wall. He wanted to just hold it. Of course, we will let it go. How big it is. This is a view of from inside the cave to outside, for those of you who have not seen it, right? So this is some of the pictures inside the cave. So I just want to show you what pictures the cave have, the stalagmites and whatnot.
Is it pretty low down as in this is?
Well, the cave is 200 feet in length, right? And the birds seeing humans, you're hearing this loud noise, real loud noise, and they're screaming and they're getting on the birds, right? They're not flying into you, but they're just flying above, you know? You don't usually, we wouldn't shine any light on the birds to scare them more, but this is what you experience, you know, that loud noise and the birds in a frenzy.
It's a good point to discuss, in oil, in caves especially, to advise not to use white lights. With red lights, the oil is still very good, because given you could see people enter these caves, they wanted to stay off the birds and the colony and about it. So red lights are always best preference.
Yeah. All right, so this is the pictures here. So this is the end of the cave, right? Where the divers would have gone under the rocks, right? And you can see a fish there, but this is the tempting part because they always want to feel if you could go to another chamber in the cave, right? And that's where they lost their lives, trying to swim, dive under there. Yeah. These are the babies, the mothers. These are the big young oil birds. Actually, the young oil birds, right? After 2 months, they're supposed to be bigger than the parents. That's what I read, right? Any birders that can tell me about that?
This is fun.
Yeah, the young ones become bigger.
They actually don't lunch with the parent and the company diet, because they infect the food of the white farms. That
Yeah.
gets them back.
Yeah, 2 months. And they will leave the nest 90 to 120 days after.
The young ones or the adults?
Those are the young ones. And this is Michael and his snake.
I think that's the end of this.
Right, so the last one. So we leave the cave and you can walk down the river, which is to the Sulphur Springs. Right? So you can just pick. So this is the route going down the river. The river is shallow. You just need to walk down, but there's a lot of bamboo that would fall on along the river. Right? And so we're going down the river there. So we have to make our way through those bamboos. And here is although you can't really see it, this is what you call the confluence of the Rio Grande River and the Oropouche River coming at this corner here, and then goes down as the North Oropouche River to the Valencia Bridge, right? And possibly a kilometer from here, walking up what is called the Rio Grande River, you will meet the Sulphur Springs. And up to the Sulphur Springs, there's also a cave. Again, you could go on. Right. This is walking up the Rio Grande River. And this is the Sulphur Springs. See what it look like? I think I have a video you can play with the somebody with a little video, quick thing.
I feel warm water out here.
Oh, unless it's some over there as well, too.
You feel warmer there?
No, it's cooler now, but it's
Don't go on the side here, we're bubbling up.
This is amazing.
Yeah.
Look at that.
It smells really eggish.
Yeah.
And I'm here with Yvonne, right? Okay, right.
And I'm happy to be here.
Okay.
when we leave here, Mario, when we're going back.
Right. So and then I'll show you the cave now. This is the entrance to the cave, right? Well, you call it the Sulphur Spring Cave. Right? This is a different cave. Eh? These are not as exotic as the real Sulphur Cave.
This key was right?
Is it a dry cave, Mario?
Yeah, dry cave. This one is dry, yeah. It's up on the hill from Sulphur Springs. Right, so that's the house Ballhead Springs. That's where you start, right? Any questions? So that should be it, right?
That's it.
Yeah, that one. I was going to the cave every 2 years, usually every 2, maybe 3 years.
No, this was how long did it take?
Oh, this trip?
Yeah.
Well, we do a lot, as you have this, we do a lot of different explorations in Cumaca. So these mountains to the top there, we would hike the Matlot. We did 2 expeditions to Matlot, organized by Chris. So we would climb from here. First of all, when you go to the end of the Cumaca Road, which is around here, right? It takes the first hike to a camp, which takes 3 miles inside, spend the night in the camp, and then hike to the top of Mount Blair, which takes 3 hours to reach the top of Mount Blair, right? And that whole ridge line is what borders the Cumaca Valley. Look, well, this isn't a report of Sulphur, the Cipriani plane crash site. So when we go to Mount Blair, it will take us 9 hours to reach Matlot from the top of Mount Blair, and it takes 3 hours to climb Mount Blair. So it takes 12 hours to hike to Matlot. Right, and we did it twice with different routes. So that could be, I could explain that one, did that expedition in a different day, but that's the challenge. So Cumaca has a lot of opportunities for hiking. There's even,
What they want to know, like, they process the drive to each of the different locations. What is the estimated time? Over, for like cave and stuff, spring, what is your estimated hiking time to reach there?
the Sulphur Spring is not that difficult to get to. So you get to the end of the village by where Ballhead Springs is, and there's a road just 100 meters from Ballhead Springs. You walk that road, and then you would see well, you have to know, right, a trail to the right that would lead you to the river. That could take an hour to get to the Sulphur Springs. To get to the Cumaca Cave from Ballhead Springs could take you an hour and a half. Or from the top of the village, where we started before, could also take you another hour to hour and a half. The problem with Cumaca is the bad road. It's not a kind of place that people frequent. You know, it's always a problem to go there, but it's a lot of opportunity to do a lot of things. We don't always get where we want to go. Might go back again. So it's not something like in the short classroom. It has become easier now because we could plot routes now, like what we couldn't do before. Before we used to kind of guess, but now we would make sure and plot our routes so we know we wouldn't move, right? And we would look at the contours of the terrain and know how steep it is, or if it looks passable, and plot a route, and hopefully we could get our way plotted out.
What is the difference between the red lines and the blue line?
The blue is rivers.
The red is road.
The trails that we do.
Where's the blue line?
The Cumaca Road, the other map has the Cumaca Road. Yeah, that's the road there that you see in white and black, right? That's the road.
Back to your other map. What's the story behind that?
That whole mountain structure there, Chris can tell you about that whole mountain. Those guys last year walked that whole mountain ridge, or most of it, trying to, when they were doing their ridge line hike. And they had to hike all those places. Some parts were actually impossible. You know, where they saw big caves, big sinkholes. Well, they look at old maps and you would see you get the information from old maps.
The real, well, for God's place is actually locally known as I believe in God. Is it to get to that point? You need to. Very beautiful. Very pretty. Is it borderline between Mantalot, Madamas Valley, and Cumaca? The Cipriani plane crash is on Cumaca Valley, and Cipriani Peak is on a Rico ridgeline.
So Chris, you actually track this when you did your stuff.
It's a combination of different products that give me the GPS routes that they've done. This is super cool as that.
Actually, Carl James has a compass of the plane crash from the Cipriani. But we hired some guys to take us there and we never saw anything.
This is for Chris. It's the very word for space and the hill. And then we look at Northern Range. You see that big range of mountains of Chagrin, Mr. Choco? This place is inside of, behind Valencia Dam, and a ridge line that runs from Frastico area all the way to eastward to
Lampanagas.
They see the gorge place, where they see the most remote and desolate place in Trinidad. And they see the word Potter 1 and Potter 2, that's our member, the international president, Reg Potter. He walked that with the next gentleman by himself. What two of them is through the forest twice, trying to plot the whole route that was from Cumaca Valley across the Matlot and Ramsville. But that was his bottom line, see when you were quarter one and quarter two. But that ridge line, when the most desolate and most, to this point in Trinidad, something after you there. I don't know how you got to get here. That's it, I guess.
Yeah. So when you're putting your plastic, is it that area? Yeah.
Yeah. The Rico Mass is the most Cipriani peak. There's a terminal peak, almost eastern end of the Rico Mass. And then it goes Mount Valley, and it goes a series of peaks. So Rocas, Cantonado, all of this map heading over there. Several gallery. Yeah. That ridge line sort of ends at Mount Blue.
Rufus saying that the northern that two ridges, that's one in front of you and one behind. So that was placed in one behind. At that hill. So when you settlement never got to that inside of there. That's what I'm doing for it.
What you said that you have to.
Can be background.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you could take video of it, right? It wasn't possible.
But I'd say going back to how we didn't expect it to take so long. Mount Pauli, Rocas to Mount Pauli was 8 hours.
So that's another scope, that was 19 hours. Discount is that 19 hours.
19 hours.
Yeah, Rocas, you will see there, Cantilado, Pavi. You will see that, it's more to the left. Oh, okay. More to the left, that comes straight up. This way.
So what's this with this area and plane crash? There's two of them. Any?
Right, so the planes used it as a corridor. So what gave out cultural from about historian. So we saw the picture earlier. The planes used that valley because it's particularly low. And the Cipriani plane crash to Mount or Pooch is considered a low valley. So the days they didn't want to have to fly, they didn't find like they do in modern day jet, right, or aviation. They keep a very low altitude so as to conserve gas. They stayed in those days, they didn't understand it fully. Cipriani came just west of Cumaca Valley, and his route apparently came up the valley and he mistook the valley that he went on and crashed, whatever his story was, and ended up in the forest there. But the villagers of Brazos Taco hearing the crash, they went to try to help out, whether they did. B24 is a similar situation where that one we found by it's a roughly 10-degree difference between the two peaks. So Quarry Hill and Hollis Hill and Cantamana all have very narrow degrees of variation. So the valleys like this, like a open wheel, 3 valleys that he was supposed to the pilot of the B24. It's assumed that he went heading from Cumaca in that valley between Cumaca and Mendoza. But in reality, he was actually going up Hollis, and Hollis is higher than Cumaca. Cumaca is only 900 feet plus, whereas Hollis peak is 1,937 thereabouts. So the height difference put him off guard. There was no visibility on that day. Came up the valley expecting. They
So you didn't expect that mountain to be there.
Pick the wrong valley.
Pick the wrong valley.
Yeah. It's very subtle variations. Sort of 10 degrees variation on the made all the difference.
Interesting.
In terms of road access, I've been able to go to Valencia. Valencia for half a mile and turn left. I think that takes me to, there's a bridge. Yeah, that's a big long bridge. Yeah, yeah. So I think I've been up to quite a long way of it. But the passport that's straight past the road that goes into the caves only. But if you reach the bridge, there's 4 miles after the bridge. Yes, and there's actually there are people there's a temple in that bed, and I think that is there we start. 4 miles after the bridge we start there, and we go up to Mount Blue. And from there we go straight over to Mount, which takes at least 12 hours. So if I could drive that road with an SUV, Hollis down. Can you cut that road up to, approach on this?
No, the gate's 30, but if you have to hike, there are two places that we can hike to Hollis. We could actually hike from Touré, which comes up in front of the dam. We could go straight into Uppernet Road in Cumaca, where we could come out, like most people would run in country, the Hollis waterfall. And if we start in Arico, we could come from Arico and come to the front of the dam. So it's three routes. So you can't just go into the dam because of the vehicle land. So the best that we have. So three ways you can make it.
The road is there, but it's right, still no road access. Still have three, as far as goes on to Bay, still have a very difficult that walking through that place, direction to get that down.
And
And the expectation of the front.
and
Yeah. It's difficult.
Maintain access then.
No, so this is not it. What you done in the road access? Straight.
right. If you have place,
Yeah. You could ask that, the next thing.
right.
That's what it's about. There's nothing beyond that. We can't go. You can't do that.
The dam is built in a beautiful valley because we have been all around the dam, right? And you can actually see the tributaries flowing into the dam, right? And you can see basically right around the dam, it's very steep slope. So you just can't actually go and swim with the look around the dam because it's very, you need to be up into the mountains and the trails to go around the dam.
Like, but one thing, you didn't mention at all, it's all about it, but President Roosevelt. Yeah, President Roosevelt in 1911, right? Visited the cave. Theodore Roosevelt in 1911, right? Yeah. I think it was 20. 26,
All right. If there's any more questions for Mario and his team,
I did some question, recently. First, I don't know, is there anything available in other range where we did the values and.
Yeah.
I think we'll be, we have to do for us. So, you know.
That's fantastic. Yeah, it's already online. There's some very, very brilliant ideas who've done it. It's available online. Send the link. It's an action model. Yeah, it's a 3 different. Yeah, very good. Yeah.
You can do something with Google Maps. Google Earth. Yeah, you can, there's a software called Google Earth that you can show the northern range, but you can speed it up to how you want it. So you can have it slow, running slow if you want.
On.
Well, it's to be done, but that's pretty printer. Let's see, we done. We have that, need to be done, but it's try to get it done.
That's not how, we just each other in other range. Nice to them.
Right.
Mario, you said you could go to Matlot from Cumaca, you got 12 hours to get to Matlot. And you've done it already.
Done it right.
And how long would you pass? I mean,
To get the Matlot, we would, so the Macross road would continue, and we will take this route where Mount Blair is, and climb Mount Blair Mountain. As I said, it's a 3-hour climb to reach up there. We'll start like 5 in the morning, so we have to camp the night in what we call Platinal, number 2.
what?
Platinal. It's after the bridge in Cumaca. Not Touré, not the Touré bridge. Way up inside. It's about 9 miles inside. So we would hike for 4 miles, spend the night in the forest, and then start 5 o'clock in the morning to climb Mount Blair, which is a 3-hour climb in the night. right? And when you reach up there, maybe 9 o'clock in the day, in the morning, but you still have 9 hours to go to get to Matlock. And we did it twice, seriously. And going to Matlock is very difficult. But Chris is usually navigating. We have people cutting in front. But there's so many ridges. So you think you're going down the mountain, you're going to Matlock. But you could make a wrong, the ridges just crossing into each other over and over. You know, so it's like different, like a tree route. You just go in. And if you miss a ridge, you will go off course. So you have to be constantly watching your GPS equipment to make sure that you're on that track, going down to Matlock.
My next question is, have you all ever gotten lost?
Well, the first time we came out from Cumaca, we came out onto Santa Cruz Road, which is the road where Macca told us about actually 2 hours up inside onto the road. And the second time we came out was on the Anand Peak, which is right once a Macca Falls. If you ever been to Macca, actually go down the hill to reach the river. We came out on the opposite side. So the Anand Peak we came on second time. So twice we did it. Right, and through COVID, and we had to leave up there enough time to reach home in Princess.
So we had to finish like 3-4. So we gotta make sure.
So that's
Really?
why we went into Platinum in Cumaca and spend the night. So that we were able to leave 4 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. And we go up to Mountain, which is 3 hours, and then take that ridge line, the opposite of that ridge line, and we go straight into Cumaca.
Trying to cross the Sardella River. No?
But actually, we went far west.
So we still have a lot of exploring to do because there's a waterfall, a very tall one up inside there. We did find certain ones in Matlock, but we want to go and see if we could find that, but it's the time.
Is there anything else that you found in the Cumaca Valley? So you said Sulphur Springs, which is Bullhead Spring.
No, Sulphur Springs
Two
is
different things.
Sulphur. Ballhead Spring is the name of the house. It's like a landmark on the road. Yeah.
And then you have the Oilman Cave.
We have 2 caves.
Right.
We have the Sulphur Spring. We have the plane crash.
Well, yeah.
And then the cross. The cross is another landmark path where there's an actual cross. And from here we could go down the Two-Way River. So sometimes I might do an expedition down the Two-Way River from the cross.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From the cross.
From the cross.
Yeah, she's coming down then.
Yeah, by the cross, so they take the left, I go down the river, I come straight down to the Two-Way River, like one way every time.
Really?
Yeah, it's lovely.
Okay, so at the Tour River, right? Where people usually bathe, if you go further up, are there more steps?
Very much beautiful, what I said, what is noticeable on Mendoza Peak? You see that peak there? The Mendoza Peak in Cumaca, what is very noticeable about that? There is no, you could never be standing on dirt, right? The entire peak is actually rock, right? You have to jump from rock to rock to rock to rock. So it actually, it's like slabs of rock right through. So you're not walking onto the plate itself. And orchids and bromeliads, it's full of it. So you have to be careful if you're going to go down here, you have to stay there. But it's really, really amazing to know that the Mendoza Peak.
I mean, in your earlier, you said you started Island Hikers in 2010, and you met Dan before. But in the early days exploring and stuff, have you ever gotten misplaced? And did you panic or were you able to get out?
No, getting misplaced is fun for me, right? Because every time I get misplaced, I learn something new, right? So like last week, for instance, I went to Matlock and say, rather than pass the conventional route that we take, so we were going to the Peach River. I said, let's pass here, and I missed the train, and we circled the whole of Matlock and learned. But I learned so much. So I like to get misplaced.
One of the best misplaced we ever to be.
Yeah. So Tobago is difficult.
We got to spend 900 in the time. We could not come.
I never had to spend the night in Trinidad, but in Tobago, yes.
In with these expeditions, you've never had to like call bell.
No,
No.
I'm good.
Oh, it's good. And like, oh,
You don't really see birds that much, you know. It might be certain birds, but you know, like the white belly antbird and the other bird too. You might hear them. You might hear the tinamou, you might hear the antpitter, right? For you to see them, you have to go birding. So when we hiking, we don't hike. We hiking. When we birding, is a different something. Dogs can tell you that. Birding is different because you know it calls for you have to be quiet, you have to be looking. It's a different something than hiking.
we're much slower days, but now, yeah. Well, my experience is Mario, I went with Mario and Lawrence and another leader. We went to scout up on Cerro del Rico.
Yeah.
I think the year of COVID or something. And that was birded scouting. And we didn't even make it to the peak. We didn't need to. We found what we were looking for a little lower down. Yeah. So you're not gonna cover as much ground, but that's how you're gonna see stuff. And there's something out there that's high altitude. You never know what you can find.
The first hiking club that started to charge other money. Right? Right? They used to take their money and buy alcohol with it. That but they were the first hiking club that started the whole hiking thing. Right? And
They started there.
what I like about Saturdays, and what they did that apart from me because they used to be exploring all sorts of places. They never study about pulling back, you know, like if they go Maracas Falls, they go to the top of the falls. If they go Hadley Falls, they go to the top. So they were always brave kind of guys doing different things, stepping out of the safety zone, you know. No, they weren't actually, not that I know. Dan can tell you everything about Saturdays more than me. So, Dan, were they hashing? But some of them was even faster, like all clubs, some people can do slow, some people can do fast. Right? And you always have people to look after the fast ones who go running. And they don't want to wait. You know, you always have to discipline the fast one. But the slow ones you have to be more lookout for. But they are the ones that could give potential trouble or breakdown.
To look at this and wants to go, you know, how would you rate like the major spots in Cumaca Valley, right? How would you rate the hikes with the major? All right, guys, we're gonna finish this now. How would you rate the major spots like Plane Crash, Sulphur Cave?
The easiest, the plane crash is very steep, as Dan was saying. Because even when you reach to the top of the ridge, you still have a very straight ridge to climb, and it's bushy and it have fallen trees. You have to know how to get through there, right? The Sulphur Springs you could do, right? The Oilbird Cave, but a lot of people don't go there. So it could be a little ticklish for somebody to go on their own. So I would advise people to this valley, that's why it's so nice. Yeah, it's not place to do things.
They don't know what they're about. Yes, we will not advise anybody to go and live one day. Really, it's very easy.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, Aripo have oil birds too. Aripo has 3 birds with caves. With 2 caves with birds, sir. Soho Cave, no, where's the cave? Carreras Cave and Aripo Big Cave have No, 3 caves are good actually in a report.
So Mario, when you're doing this, you use contours and GPS and study that before you actually go.
No, we trust the English manager, yes.
But we more or less know the terrain now. You know, we're familiar with the terrain, so we don't really, you know, bother with it too much.
That's why Laura did in my trip.
Sometimes like here, for instance, when you're hiking down to the dam, pretty fun, I might bring you up on this ridge line here and bring you across there.
That was the first one we came, that road without the woman.
Right.
And we went down to the dam, turned left, and went to a place, and then we came back.
Right, so all this is mountain to climb, all here, right? But, you know, that's really fun of it, to show those young guys and them that we can take a different route to come back and pass here on this way.
What's for the colors, if you go in the reservoir, take a boat, can you go up it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't go up it.
Again, it's yeah, they really have to know somebody's side, they take care of us.
Yeah.
And the boat could actually take on about 3%. Yeah, it's really small.
If Trinidad, Dion is more different, it would have been a nice tourist attraction for Wassa, but it's just
It
that
was
we
there.
have a tendency to litter. Eh?
Yes, it's just one step after one step. After.
Yeah, there's a lot of different waterfalls going up, and they're lovely too.
Pass the colors.
Pass on top of Hollis Waterfall.
But if Hollis River starts, Chris was saying, and heights of Rico, what the dry river. That's the valley, the question the valley,
Comes from El Cerro.
So it goes straight down, from there, straight into the Hollis River. We actually do a hike, parts of it, right? We
Yeah.
go down the big cave road and come up, it's a really nice hike.
We do a repo loop. A loop in a repo going down the dry river and come back at another end, because the repo is another thing that we could talk about too. Another valley that is interesting, maybe next year. Yeah. So we explore the Repo Valley. And the water from that comes from El Cerro de la Repo.
Instead of from zero, that's like the edge of that two steps. That's basically what it makes.
Cross?
By the
No, the cross is where, if you come down from the cross, you meet the river in its tributary form, in its very small form. And then as you go down, other tributaries, bigger tributaries come into it to make the two-way waterfall.
So you can actually go down.
You could go down.
We're not gonna say.
You went down this year. Yeah. I didn't show any pictures, but there's a tall waterfall going down too, you know. But it's better in the rainy season.
So Mario, this hospital doesn't get all the process anymore when you try to visit the dam, so that's what we're talking down here, but that's the bigger.
Well, as I say, if they know you, they trust you, they might probably do it. Yeah, if the club wants to apply, do a letter and send it to them. I wish they could do that.
If they take it to the other staff, they'll just take it in front of it. So where the animal staff and table staff. But if you take it, it's actually where you said you want to go, so people who what is that?
All sides are coming down.
Very far from the front.
But if you have to go from the front of the dam.
Look, this is the front of the dam here. This is the waterfall here.
What's the distance?
Wow.
I could say a mile or more.
That's all.
Yeah, but you can't walk around the dam.
If
You need a boat.
More than that.
Well,
We have, in most countries, dams and so on are considered an asset for water sport like sailing and kayaking.
Yes.
When Trent were in charge of we had some discussions with them and they were very enthusiastic about allowing that. And then of course they went. We have, as the Canoeing and Rowing Federation, had permission to open Hollis and Arena at times for flat water training and so on. It got rescinded when residents in the area started complaining what are these people taking boats on the river and polluting our water and things like that and they backed up. But note that Wasser was put boats with the engines in the middle. But the situation is that we have not been able to.
Meryl, that is actually ties in your story, which is saying that ties in with why we found out about the big waterfall in Northern and the dam. Because Glenn went cracking with you all on that. Just 2 or 3 times we were given access.
Yeah.
And he saw it, but he couldn't get it to the and said, let's try and get there. And that started a cascade. We found everybody trying to get to that waterfall. Oh.
Glenn was truly the person that, and in his 70s, 78, he passed away. That was setting the pace for a lot of us. Glenn Wilkes,
Yes.
right? Right, because he would say, you know, Hollis Dam here. And then we would say, well, how are we getting to it? And he would have it. I remember first time it took us 3 attempts from Aripo side to get to Hollis Dam, right? I remember Glenn, we were passing on a trail underneath, and Glenn and Chris was on a trail on top, right? And we were all trying to get to the dam. But that was the first attempt, but we had to do 2 other times to actually before we reached the dam. So that's the kind of work that we put in. Because we're passionate and we want to get here, to get to that dam.
That's it. Did other people have access, like other people knew what that is?
No.
Or is this something called?
Open up the trail, we find our path, we mark it, and it's open for other people to follow.
All this events we're going to be doing to uncover the different
There's a lot, and it's still, and I mean, after being hiking for 50 years, every year I learn a few things. I learn a few trails, so I can never learn all the trails in Trinidad or do all the trails here. Well,
Like, they brush off, is that something almost?
yeah, nobody gonna go there. Nobody ain't going there. I must have went there about, if I went there 5 years ago, I saw nobody ain't gone since the last 5 years. That's to tell you how it is.
Wait for you to open the trail and then. But it's still not, it's not accessible. It's steep.
Even I go once, it'll be like I might do this hike once every 3 years, 3 to 5 years, right? So by the time I go back again, you know, you have to.
You have to take photographs, you bring that document.
But when we were doing it, we didn't even realize that I would have the opportunity. So I thank you all too, because Dan will always say, take a little picture, take a little video, right?
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
like,
Yeah.